Welcome everybody to the latest indie recap video here on the channel. Each week we play indie games and have a special night on Wednesday where we play nothing but them, and these videos are the recap of those streams. For this video we are taking a look at more games that we played during the various summer festivals that Steam had this past year, and we are beginning with the game Cris Tales. And this is a title done in kind of the classical JRPG style, but with a twist in terms of time manipulation. So our story follows this girl here, who discovers that she is the chosen one who will have to save the land, and is given the power to essentially see 3 different timelines all at the same time, as you can see by the kind of triangle or the shard that is moving across the screen. So on the left hand side she sees the past, on the right hand side she sees the future. And this sets up some very weird and kind of interesting dynamics of you seeing how an area looks in its various states. So the game from the demo seems to focus more on the storylines and kind of the puzzle solving along that point of things, where you'll have to learn information or affect things in one timeline that will allow you to do something in the other timeline and move the story forward. There are of course hidden items and treasure chests to find, and from the demo it was kind of hard to see where the game is going in terms of the story progression and kind of how much will the combat actually matter. Now, with that said, of course, you will be doing fighting, and the game does throw a few little wrinkles in terms of general combat. So when you are fighting, you have a timeline that you can see at the top of the screen, but the real thing you're able to do is invoke your various crystals to affect time. And this allows you to move characters into the past, present, or future, which in turn will affect how they behave. So a crazy or a very powerful warrior in the present may not be that dangerous in the past, or could become old and enfeebled in the future, allowing you to deal with them like so. And there is also a very slight active time system where if you properly time attacks and button presses, it will increase your damage or reduce damage taken. Now, from the demo, combat did not appear to be random, and the battles we did were all part of the story. Now, that does raise, I think, one concern that I have about Cris Tales, and that's just how much will the time manipulation actually factor into playing the game versus just being more of a puzzle solution. And from this boss fight you're watching right now, you're going to see that we're going to have to use kind of a trick to make them vulnerable to damage. And while that is an interesting idea, it again does make me question just how much we're going to be able to play this game when it comes to kind of exploring the mechanics and whether it will be more on the linear side. And I think the game reminds you a little bit of kind of like the Paper Mario RPGs in that aspect, where each boss has some kind of interesting quirk or consideration that once you figure it out, just kind of set the stage to repeat that pattern until the boss was defeated. But the game definitely has a great presentation to it, and I'm curious to see where they go with things in terms of its story and design. And with that, we're turning to Creeper World 4. This is obviously the 4th game in the kind of pseudo RTS franchise, which for those of you watching this right now, you are either well acquainted with it or you have no idea what you're looking at. But Creeper World games essentially challenge you to create the logistics and supply chain of your defenses and resources as you fight against this almost never-ending wave of the creep. That's that purple jello-y looking stuff that you see on the map here. The challenge is that the creep is growing and kind of flooding the map in real time, and behaves kind of in a realistic growth in terms of how it will rise up and start conquering more and more of the land. Your mission is to set up defensive chains of towers as well as earning energy in order to start pushing back against the creep and unlocking various upgrades and trying to stop the major kind of sources of creep on the map. Now, Creeper World 4 is different from the previous 3 games by the fact that this is a 3D engine, wherein the previous games were all done in 2D. So the general gameplay kind of goes between 2 distinct phases. You have the build-up kind of hold your line phase as you're trying to get the necessary energy and resources you need to push out. And then you go into this kind of, carving out the map, one area at a time phase, as you need to set up towers in order to power your various turrets, resupply them, and repair them. Then you need to move them around in order to attack and just kind of start breaching the creep. Now you have to be careful because if you leave any spots where the creep can grow, it will start to reform and try to attack. And if your buildings are covered by it, they will quickly take damage. Now, if you're wondering about progression in the series, there isn't anything in terms of persistent upgrades you can use to improve yourself. Instead, each map will usually unlock some kind of feature or upgrade that can then be applied, such as unlocking a new tower, unlocking a new resource, etc., etc. But you do need to complete the campaign in order to see everything there is. Now, with Creeper World 4, there is going to be the idea of a randomly generated map, kind of for expert level play. And the game, I believe, does feature modding support, and people have submitted their own maps. And like I said, this is a series that has a very hardened fan base to it. And they've, of course, played the previous 3 games, and it'll be interesting to see if the move to 3D will help Creeper World 4. So if you're curious, this game's demo is currently available, and you can definitely see what they're going for with it. And again, this is one of those games that what you see is what you get, although I am not the best player at it. But we move on to Starmancer. And this is a colony sim style game. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Space Base DF9, I think, by Double Fine. And the footage you're seeing is taken during the Steam Festival again, and I believe this is a pre-early access build. So our general concept here is that we are managing a space station of genetically cloned humans. And it's our job to build it up, sustain life, go out and find resources, and hope we don't blow the whole dang thing up due to mismanagement. Although if you want to do that, just like in The Sims, you can certainly have that option. Now, in terms of the general gameplay, it does follow the colony sim Dwarf Fortress-esque route, that your various colonists all will behave and will do their own thing based on the jobs that you assign them. So an engineer will go around trying to fix things, other characters will go around trying not to blow stuff up, and your kind of overall progression is going to be done by acquiring more research, as you saw in the tech tree there. And you'll need to build various structures and harvest resources in order to move up there. As you get more colonists, you'll be able to do more, which will, of course, open up more of a resource drain. So right now, I'm kind of in the step of having to set up the initial production chain, getting this kind of slime or goo made, biomass, I think it's called, in order to start making more clones. And the game is, again, leaning heavily on that colony sim style of setting up these individual systems and rooms, which will then define their functions. And you have to make sure everything is organized, people are fed, their needs are met, or they'll go insane, sleep on the floor, or just do even worse stuff than that. And while this all sounds great, the game makes one of the classical fatal mistakes when it comes to onboarding. And that is not really doing a good job in terms of introducing concepts in order of importance. And I ran into a problem that the game was asking me to do something, and it didn't seem like I knew what or how to do it. As another point that I thought was very frustrating, in order to kind of keep your people happy, you need to build additional structures and services in your space station. But the problem was I couldn't get to that stuff without unlocking more items on the tech tree. But I couldn't unlock more of the tech tree without kind of going in a more unoptimal and kind of worse way of building my base. So this meant that I was already kind of behind the 8 ball in terms of making sure that the people were getting the resources they needed, which they weren't, but still having to blaze through and hope that I could do it. So right now the game is describing that I need to send out characters into the wild blue yonder to bring back resources. But the problem was that I couldn't get the people or couldn't get the necessary considerations done. And because of that, I couldn't get the tech that I needed to keep them happy. So what ended up happening later in this play was that my entire space station broke down because the people went mad, and they couldn't get me the resources I needed in order to fix the problem. And while that is certainly a beginner's problem, it's not good onboarding to kind of make the player fail and kind of learn along those lines. With that said, though, I do like the aesthetic, and I think there is potential here. And again, this was an pre-early access build. So there is always, and I'm sure the developers have worked on this game a lot since we played it, and I will be looking forward to trying this one out again in the future. With that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to discuss a few more of the indie games that I took a look at during the festival. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. We now turn to a very different game. This is KeyWe. And this is not one of those titles that's aimed at delivering a very unique multiplayer experience that will probably end with friendships being ruined. So our story is that we are on an island that apparently has turned over all of its post office work to KeyWe birds here, who have to make use of the most Rube Goldberg, esque typing or mail sorting machine in order to get mail delivered all around the island. So, keep in mind that this game is meant to be played with 2 players, and the demo that we played did not have online co-op or any kind of multiplayer functionality built into it just yet. And I'm sure in whatever build is out now, or obviously for the finished version, that will be a feature. But for this point, it was up to me to control 2 different birds in order to type the exact words that show up on that page up there. And yes, if you want to do stuff like capital letters or any kind of special symbols, that's going to require more work in changing the machine around. Now the game is planning to have different modes to it, including kind of a campaign story, as well as kind of a time trial to see how quickly you can type these words in, which, as you can see by what I'm doing, is not that long. And yes, you do need to synchronize sending the letter as well. And like a lot of the games we've played, this is going to be an interesting one to see what people think. Because I am sure if I play this with any one of my friends, we won't be friends by the time this game is over. And with that, we'll turn to our final game of the video, the Dungeon of Naheulbeuk, and I'm pretty sure I just butchered that. It is based on a popular, I believe, a French comic book or a comic series. And this is a tactical RPG strategy game. Now, this game is actually out in its full release now, but we were playing this during the demo on, the Steam Summer Festival. So, the idea behind this game is that you control a party of 9 characters who are trapped in this dungeon. And there are lots of whimsical comedy jokes and tropes and all that kind of humor you can come to expect from that kind of description in this game. The idea is that each character basically has no real idea what they're doing, and they still have to make their party work. So, the combat system involves, again, it's a turn-based system where each character has their own unique role and what abilities they can make use of. Cover will obviously protect you from range attacks, and the challenge of the game is just knowing where to set characters up and dealing with their unique quirks. For instance, you have I think it was a troll or an orc in your party who is your heavy bruiser, who can't really take all that much cover, but it's just so damn big that it doesn't really matter to him. While you have sneakier characters who can hide and cloak before going in for a backstab position. And there definitely seems to be a lot of depth in terms of the character progression and fine-tuning your party. And of course missing shots, as you saw right there. And when you're not in combat, you get to explore the dungeon, which is handmade, and kind of is reminiscent of something like King's Bounty. That you can see enemies on the map, you solve puzzles, and you're collecting the resources that you need in order to make more progress and help you out here. So, this was one of those games that the controls, if I remember right, kind of felt a little cumbersome in terms of the UI and just how many things you had to click on or set up for each round of combat. But all in all, the game didn't seem that bad. And if you are looking for another kind of tactical RPG style game, I would say give this one a check, or at least try out the demo, and see if you can get used to or if you enjoy the comedy, as that is going to be a major part of this experience. So, with that said, that is going to wrap it up for our video this week. As always, I would like to thank the games who submitted keys for future streams. Again, for this one, this was all the Summer Festival titles. But if you are working on a game that you'd like me to take a look at for one of our Wednesday indie streams, please get in touch with me. Again, you'll find links to Twitter, Discord, emails all around here. Be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.